I'm Drew Breezy, and this is the Comm Center. In Hannah Payne, Part 6, was the young woman in Georgia following the golden rule and being a good Samaritan, or was she peddling fool's gold as an aggressive vigilante? On the Comm Center.
Is Drew Breezy, our host. He was a police officer, at least 30 years of law enforcement experience.
John and I have discussed a few times whether we want to do these series in the future or what's going to happen. So just a couple show notes. First of all, we are, I'm not joking. We're on page or chapter 6 of the Hannah Payne volumes. And I am not joking also when we discuss, like, this was literally just going to be, we both rolled our eyes when we thought, man, are we going to have to make this 2 episodes? But it really does seem like every time we open up another chapter in this thing, 2 more chapters open up. So it all started with a 911 call. That's the whole point of our show, and the semantics within the 911 call. And we're able to take you from the 911 call through the scene, through the interrogation, through the courtroom, the whole process, to even a 911 supervisor testifying. And now we're going to go into, we're continuing on with the defendant's words. And so what we're going to do is continue on with Hannah Payne's testimony. She's being examined. I don't want to say examined. That sounds lewd. She's being questioned by her defense attorney. She's it's an examination in trial terms, but she's being questioned by her defense attorney. She's telling her story. There was a compelling part that we left off with last week to kind of keep you interested. Hopefully it was serving as a cliffhanger, and we'll just pick up from that point. We'll see how it goes today, John. We'll definitely finish off the defense, but I'm telling you, buckle your seatbelts for when the prosecution gets in there and does her cross-examination, because
I'm going to rant.
Yeah, I'm going to rant.
Busy road, and I can't hear what he's saying to me. But as I got closer, I heard him asking me, "Who the F are you?" And I told him that I was nobody, but that I had the police on the phone. And that they wanted us to go back to the original accident site. Okay. Apparently I was close enough for him to reach out the car, and he knocked my phone out of my hand, and he grabbed me by my wrist, and he pulled me into the vehicle.
Okay, now, you said apparently you got too close to the vehicle. Did it appear to you you were too close to the vehicle, or?
I wasn't thinking that I needed adequate space to stay away from him or anybody or anything.
Okay, and then you said he knocked the phone out of your hand.
Yes.
And then he grabbed you. You said one was on your wrist, and where's the other hand?
And originally he had just grabbed my wrist. And he had pulled me in the car, and at some point my shirt had gotten grabbed. Okay. And he...
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
He was pulling my wrist, and he pulled me in the vehicle, and he kept yelling at me, telling me, "I have something for you." And he used... I have something for you, bitch. And he's leaning, and he's reaching, and he's pulling. And at this point, I remember that I'm sorry.
Take your time.
I remember that he had let go of my wrist, and he grabbed me by the back of my neck. And it was as if he was trying to kind of keep a hold of me.
All right, what's going to come later, I hate to foreshadow again, but all of this is verifiable through photographs. That maybe that's something else we'll include on the video, John. But All of this is verifiable on photographs because you could see her injuries, you could see her torn shirt, you could see the marks on her wrists and all this other stuff. All of the witnesses that the prosecution used, they're going off their memory from 4 years ago. And I hate to use the word bias, but memory is definitely malleable. I will definitely say that.
Eyewitness testimony is trash. That's not only the opinion of this man, but it's been heavily documented that eyewitness testimony is frequently tainted. It's frequently wrong. And after 4 years, are you kidding me?
Yeah. And right. So I would encourage anyone to go, like, we didn't even scratch the surface with the witnesses. I think you'd find something interesting if you looked at the witness list, but just do that for yourself.
The entire time I'm telling him, I'm thinking, I still have to be on the phone with the police. They have to know. I'm telling him to let me go. And that's when he hits the gas and we go forward. I'm still in the car at this point, and while it only may have been a few steps or a few feet, when you are being held against your will and you have no idea what's ahead of you and you're looking down, it felt like it lasted forever.
All right, that struck me when she carefully used the terms held against your will. That in essence could be construed as kidnapping. It could also be construed as a false imprisonment. Kidnapping, so you'll know, is a forcible felony. So I hope that there was purpose behind having her say that, meaning it's truthful, and she's saying that to fit statutory ingredients, we'll call them, for the stew that gets presented in the closing arguments. I don't know factually that he brought these things up, but I can tell you, if this is a forcible felony in the sense that you're being kidnapped and your perception is that you're being kidnapped, then this changes the face of the self-defense argument, in my opinion. I'm not an attorney, obviously. What do you think, John?
I'm also a non-attorney spokesman, but yeah, if she's making the case that in that moment that she felt that, her life was in danger, if that's the situation that you're in, I mean, you can use force to defend yourself. And I don't, you told me something before the show that I'm trying not to let slip, because we have to do a beautiful dance and a reveal of this podcast so that everyone can be as mad about it as I am.
Yeah.
But let's just keep going from here.
Okay.
And I just remember it was like I saw my life flash before my eyes, and I thought I was going to go down Riverdale Road.
Now I'm going to call him like I sees him too, John, because we talked about body language in the trial, and we talked about body language in the interrogation room, and I'm going to tell you that my normal line of thought is that the eyes, the nose, and the mouth are all connected. So if you're crying and your voice is cracking and you're truly crying, you will see snot and tears, is what I would, it distills down to.
Yeah.
And I don't see that here. I see her voice cracking, and I don't have any doubt in my mind that she's recounting a very harrowing incident. But I think other people know that also. And, what people call crocodile tears or whatever, this could play into the jury's mind. Now, what I will also say that she seems like a strong kid. She seems like a pretty resilient kid. I mean, maybe it's better to show your full emotion. And she's been crying the whole trial, though, so you'll know.
Yeah,
she's been sitting at the defense table crying over there.
Yeah, there's been lots of pictures of her, and I'm sure we'll get to it too when everything comes out that she's her life's being thrown away. So how could you not respond that way?
Right.
Out hanging out the side of this car.
And how did you do that?
my entire body was up against the vehicle, and I'm just trying my hardest to push away with any part of me that I can, whether it was my arms or my knees, trying to just put distance in between me and the vehicle, thinking I could get away from it, and was unsuccessful.
Just in contrast, it's got nothing to do with this trial. Kyle Rittenhouse, if you'll remember, in that trial, had a full-on panic attack on the stage. Boy, that's a Freudian slip, I guess. He had a full-on panic attack on the stand as he was recounting one of the incidents where he had to shoot one of the guys.
I remember
And
that.
he just like lost his lunch basically and was just crying. And of course, the famous LeBron James tweet of "fuck that kid," like he was faking it or something.
Well, LeBron James is a master craftsman of faking it. If you watch his reels of him flopping on the ground anytime someone is even in his presence, someone who throws himself on the ground for sports injuries, having the audacity to comment on a kid who was involved in the
Right.
death of another, as if LeBron James has any idea.
Perpetuating the lie that we're getting way off on the tangent here, but
I know, I just hate that guy.
so do I.
And at one part,
Fuck that guy.
you hear yourself screaming, "Get the F out of the car." What was going on then?
I'm thinking that I have a better chance of not being drugged if he's not in the vehicle.
So
Appear to be.
Okay, I think there's
Okay.
he went through the motions of showing the jury and showing the judge and showing the prosecution and showing the witness the sealed package with the shirt in it. It was a piece of evidence. He even had her identify it. Do you recognize what this says on here? And she's like, yeah, I think it says black shirt belonging to defendant or something. Then he opened it carefully with scissors. That's just part of the court process. But I cut all that out. It's essentially, it's not for show. It's to show that there was a preservation of the evidence, and the chain of custody is that it maintained its integrity until they opened it up for the trial.
Is there an objection from the state? Yeah, I mean, he is not tendered.
I'm going to tell you what she.
Keep this way. You have to-
Okay. How's it going to show it to her to see?
There are procedural things that obviously these two attorneys disagree with. He
just kind of shook his head as he was walking there. He was like, really, do I got to go through all this? And the funny thing is, we were talking about this before the show too, is that certain people have been called to the stand in order to introduce evidence that both sides could have stipulated to, but the prosecution wanted to tout them out for their own reasons. So now the defense attorney, of course, wanted to just have a simple piece of evidence like her top, which is integral in describing or showing the fact that she was in a struggle, and he's having to struggle. He's having his own struggle just getting the evidence presented to the jury, which this is just her top. This is the clothing that she was wearing the day of. This is not suspect evidence. It's providence is not in question. And yet, for some reason, the prosecutor has to drag her feet every little bit to keep it from being shown to them. Go ahead.
I'm not, look, if you ingest the podcast by listening to it on one of the podcast platforms, I applaud you and I appreciate you. I love to listen to podcasts as I'm drifting off to sleep, and Lord knows I probably put enough people to sleep in my lifetime. You're missing out though in this particular episode, or maybe the previous episode, because this defense attorney is getting the shit beat out of him, in the sense that every objection he raises, the judge is like, nah, we're going to let it in. And it's stuff that even you as the common person, or me as the common person, non-attorney, would be like, well, hold on a second. How is that fair? Like, you're allowing them to do this, but you're not allowing him to do that, or vice versa. Wait a minute. You're not going to allow them to do that, but you know what I mean? So he has some classic eye rolls. He definitely has some pretty pronounced puffs of air coming from his lungs at times. And, then you see him furiously writing. Hopefully that's to set up for the appeal. I don't know if there is an appeal in this, but it just does seem like the the prosecution can kind of do whatever they want in this. And anytime he tries to do anything, the prosecution is going to object and the judge is going to agree with him. So you may be missing out if you're listening. John? Anything?
No, go ahead. Let's go.
At this time, Your Honor, may I approach?
You may approach.
Do you see this shirt?
Yes.
Does that shirt look familiar to you?
Yes.
Is it an accurate representation of the shirt you were wearing that day of the?
Yes. Yes.
At this time, Your Honor, I would like to tender what is exhibit defense 39.
Any objection from the state?
No objection.
Admitted without objection.
And I'd like to present it to or show to the jury the shirt she was wearing the day of the incident. Was it torn when you were wearing it that day?
No.
When Mr. Herring grabbed you, did he tear it?
Yes.
And is this a fair representation of the rips and what it ended up being at the end?
Yes. I had marks on the back of my neck and kind of scratches along my arms, bruisings on my wrists, and scratches along my chest.
Okay.
Kind of a black eye, but a bruised eye and a busted upper lip.
And all of this occurred while he was dragging you forward towards your vehicle?
Correct.
All those marks that were photographed were, and by the way, she was detained almost immediately. And all of those photographs and the injuries she's describing are in complete contrast to what at least one, if not two, of the witnesses said happened. What they say, what one of the witnesses said was that she was 10 yards away on the opposite side of the street watching the whole interaction go down, and that Hannah Payne jumped out of her Jeep angry, cussing, and she could not believe the volume of punches that the poor man sitting in the car was taking from Hannah Payne in the face.
Well, but we would have evidence of that. Wouldn't the coroner be able to show that he had contusions and things like that? I mean, can't we back these things up with
Sure.
expert testimony?
Sure, if we didn't want to convict. if we wanted a fair trial, we would.
I'm just saying, have the defense subpoena this guy. So our witnesses are saying that our victim here had the ever-loving shit beat out of him. What did you find of, if anything, upon your examination? Well, death by, gunshot at close range. Okay. Did you find contusions about the face, the neck, the left side of his body, anywhere where someone reaching into the window of his Dodge Dakota could reach him? No.
Right. Pretty simple. I didn't, in full disclosure, I didn't see the medical examiner's testimony. That may have come up, but I can tell you this. There's a whole to-do about how she's throwing punches, how she's the aggressor, and that comes up in the closing for the state.
Yeah.
This never comes up, this part. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
When you're talking about the state.
Before he punched the gas is when he was kind of turning his body and he was reaching behind him.
Did you see what he was reaching for?
No, I did not. After the reaching is when he mashed the gas, and when he mashed the gas, like I said, have no understanding of how far we went, how much farther we can go. At that point, I didn't know that we had stopped because we hit my vehicle, and that's when I drew my weapon.
Right, now you said mashing the gas. What did that sound like?
You could hear the truck just revving and hissing from like the liquids spewing, and it was loud.
And you stated that then you said you have a gun?
I did.
And what was your intent at that point?
My intent was that pulling it out, he would let me go, and I'd pull away from the vehicle, and that would be it.
Did you ever stop trying to pull away from the vehicle?
No. It was in my holster on my right hip, and he had a hold of me, and I pulled it out and immediately started trying to just continue to push against the door with it, like pushing away from him.
Okay. And as you're pushing away from the door, what happens then?
He grabbed my hand with the gun in it.
Okay, let me talk. And what happened then?
After he originally grabbed it and was kind of pulling at it back and forth is when he put his other hand on top and he started trying to actually yank it away from me.
And you said he's trying to push it this way and pry it out of your hand?
To me, it's what it felt like he was trying to pry it out of my hand.
And you said another hand came over and grabbed it?
Yes.
Okay.
From the top.
In his scene, how did he have your wrist? Like this?
So he brought out a replica gun, a toy gun. He specifically showed to the jury that this gun was a toy. There's an orange marker at the tip of it, and it's to simulate what the gun is, so they can show the jury. The defense attorney hands her the gun. She's got it in her right hand like she should. He's kind of playing the part of Kenneth Payne. No, not Kenneth Payne. Mr. Herring in the vehicle, but he's very intentionally positioned so that the jury can see everything that they're doing, and the prosecutor can see. I don't think the judge can see everything, but he's trying to demonstrate what happened.
This
This hand was here, yes.
okay, and the gun was here, and he's pulling you forward.
Yes.
And you said he had you here
But-
on this.
He was closer.
Okay. So, and he had your shoulder with this hand, or what was this hand doing?
That he let go
Let go.
once he got a hold of this wrist.
So he came.
And he
tried
grabbed the
to-
gun.
All right, you tried to grab the gun like this.
Correct.
Okay. And where was your finger?
The same way that I have it now.
And when he grabbed like this.
So he said, "Where was your finger?" She replied, "The same way that I have it now." And he turned her hand over and looked at it. I personally, and I'm not an attorney again, would have said, "You mean with your finger along the slide and not in the trigger guard?" Like I would have verbally said that to make sure, because it's an important fact, and you definitely want that in the written record, and you want the jury to hear it too. Like
It's
And
a fundamental of gun control is that your fingers along the slide until you're ready to fire, and you're not ready to fire until you're ready to kill somebody. So if you have poor trigger discipline, that's the mark of someone who shouldn't be carrying around a firearm. She's already been on the stand and said that she's taken these classes and she's done these things. And if she's regularly handling a firearm, she'll know that when you pick it up, that's just how you have your fingers along the rail.
good point.
That shows his fingers are right there over the trigger.
Correct.
Is that a correct?
I mean,
So-
yes, but
So it's possible any of the 4 digits got into that trigger.
correct.
Yeah. Thanks. Okay. And when you got on the phone with
So his right hand, so his left hand is kind of got her hand turned with the gun in it, and then the right hand comes over, simulating the quote victim. The right hand comes over and puts, kind of sandwiches the gun in between his two hands, but in the sandwich, the lettuce probably, or the tomatoes, would be her hand. So he's got her, he's got his hand over the trigger guard on the top part of the gun. The gun is still pointed towards him. And what he's saying is, so any of those free digits, I think he said 4 digits, but free, FREE, could have made it into the trigger guard at some point, at which time, when you start struggling, one of these fingers could have pulled the trigger. And again, I think that's another poignant point.
Well, poignant, you're calling it reasonable doubt. If we're going to convict someone beyond reasonable doubt, this right here seems reasonable that's possible that could have happened. Now, reasonable doubt does not mean all doubt. It doesn't mean you can't convict someone with some doubt in your mind. It's not
Right.
like what they portrayed in the movies, but right there, that's enough right there where the state can't meet a burden of saying that it definitely wasn't his finger in the trigger guard versus her. We just don't know. That's doubt.
Right. We don't know, and we could know if there were fingerprints taken from the trigger, is an argument that he made, but that never occurred.
Well, the other thing is that you might not want to do that anyway. With it being her gun, she would have a fingerprint there regardless
Right,
if she had
but
used it
you can
before.
explain that. You can definitely explain her finger being on the trigger,
But you couldn't
because
explain his.
it could have been the next. You could never explain his, and so we're being fair about this. You may not get a clear fingerprint of his on that trigger, because if it's just the interior part of his finger, there's definitely going to be, there's not going to be a clear ridges and valleys of a traditional fingerprint that you can identify somebody with. And there was DNA recovered. There was 2 sets of male DNA recovered off of the top of the firearm, but they're not identified. Her DNA was definitely identified. The other 2 male DNA, well, that's not identified.
It's frustrating.
It's frustrating.
911, you stated that he pulled the trigger.
Yes.
And what else did you state?
To her, I had told her that he had just pulled the trigger on my gun. And I remember kind of looking around, and I noticed behind me that there was someone who was standing behind me, and I asked them if they seen everything, if they would stay to, be a witness. And he was asking, like, if we were okay. He's like, are you okay? Is everything okay? And I told him, I said, I am, but no, he's not. And I asked the dispatch for an ambulance. And that's when I noticed that there were actually, there were police that were, to me, felt so close that all of this could have just been avoided.
But you had no foresight or any kind of anticipation that it would conclude like this?
I had no idea. And I'm trying to explain to her what's going on, but at this point, I'm kind of in a bit of a daze. It was all over the place, honestly.
And what did you do with the gun?
I reholstered it. I took the holster off my hip and I put it back in the holster.
Okay, and did it stay in that condition till the police came?
It did. I remember looking up and seeing that there was a police officer who was coming up from where he would have been at, like, the interstate area. And as he was walking up, I was trying to get his attention because he was, like, walking towards all the bystanders, having no idea what was going on, having no idea who was involved with what or where or how. And I was trying to get his attention so that he knew, here's the weapon, so that he could have it. After the police officer had come up, one of the people that was standing there were basically, again, asking what had happened. And she asked me, she said, did you just shoot him? And I told her, I said, no. I said, he pulled me into the vehicle. He had a hold of me, but that I never had my finger on the trigger.
And why is that?
Number one, from training, and number two, I never had any intention on pulling the trigger.
And in fact, you never did pull that trigger, did you?
Correct.
Came up to when the weapon was fired.
What you're seeing is body cam video of a sergeant that was there from Clayton County Police Department. And he's interviewing her in the back seat. She's in her pink hoodie, which was made to be kind of a big deal because one of the witnesses said, yeah, she went to the trunk, or she went to the back of her Jeep, took off her shirt and put this hoodie on like it was something nefarious. Well, they tore her shirt apart during the struggle.
That was it was a black top. It looked like business attire to me. It looks like something fairly sheer. If and she's a she's a big lady. If she's got a strap or a part of the collar or the bust of her shirt is damaged, she might be immodest at that point,
Yeah.
so I think she pulled a hoodie that she had out of the vehicle because if she's going to be on scene and she's going to be talking to people, she wants to protect her modesty. I
Right.
don't think that her taking off her top is a I mean, throwing it in the back of the trunk, are we kidding? If she's gonna be searched incident to arrest, they're gonna find that anyway. I don't find that to be surreptitious or anything. I think she's just
No,
protecting her.
and I could be mistaken. Maybe she just threw the hoodie on over maybe she didn't take the top off, and maybe it's still on underneath or something. But I know that they made a big deal about her going to the back of the Jeep and putting on this hoodie as if it were to conceal something. But you're right. I mean, like, it's proper. And if they're, if the argument was, well, she's so callous or whatever, I'm like, I mean, what's reasonable, really? I mean, like,
Well, this is one of those things, Drew. We see this all the time when we analyze cases, whether it's true crime or whatever. No matter what they do, no matter how they respond, the commentator wants to find something that makes them look smart. So they'll take no matter what it is that's happening and
Right.
show that it's them tipping their hand. Oh, they have no affect at all. They don't care about their missing wife. Oh, look at the way his crocodile tears. He's way overreacting to his missing wife. No matter what happens, the person that's trying to use this for clicks and likes is going to find some fault with their behavior. So, and whether
Yeah.
it's that or comments in a YouTube section, ignore all that noise. People always just make it out for whatever they want.
Before we go forward, and we're not going to talk about the crocodile mile that you talked about the other day, but before we go forward, I do want to point out there was one YouTube comment that I saw regarding this defense attorney. I think his name is Mr. Tucker, that specifically said, I don't know how else to say this, but he sounds like a whiskey bottle.
He grabbed me, my hand, where I had my gun, where I had my, I was holding my gun with that hand. He pulled me to him, and I'm pulling away, I didn't want to pull the trigger. He didn't have anything in his hand now. I could clearly see this and every gun wouldn't have anything on it. But he grabbed my hand, and we're going back and forth in the car, and he's pulling it, turning it towards me, and he grabs it, and all next thing I knew, it went on. I just remember like feeling like I was waiting for forever, and I had no sense of time or what was going on.
All right. While you were waiting, did you do anything while you were waiting and sitting there alone?
I remember pacing, and that's when I noticed that my nails were broken. So I started messing with my fingernails. Started like taking them off. One of them I remember was hurting, which is what made me realize it was broken.
Okay. And do you recall any of the conversation between Detective Haywood and Moore from that interview?
Not really. I remember that to me it seemed like they would kind of go back and forth between one being more interested than the other. And they kept asking me the same things over and over again. But every time they would ask me, they would kind of insinuate like a different narrative, which to me, I'm thinking that there's an obvious explanation that everybody that was sitting around would have been able to see what I said happened.
For the purposes of what we're going to talk about mainly in the next episode, but I think we're going to be able to get to part of it tonight. I want you to notice Hannah Payne's affect when she's answering these questions. Is she being just so you can have, this is a baseline for you. Just watch, what she's answering here. There's nothing, there's no jack in the box that's about to jump out at you here. I just want you to kind of take note of how she's answering these questions.
So to me, I didn't feel like it was, I guess, logical. So I was just confused.
Can you give an example of that?
I mean, if just trying to change like my wording, trying to instead of when I explained to them that I was at the side of his vehicle, when they went back to repeat what I had said, they said, so you reached in his vehicle to show him your phone or something like that. And I just remembered, no, that's not what I said. I was trying to tell them exactly what happened. They kept stopping me, and then they would try and turn what I was saying, and then they'd pass it back to the other person.
So she was kind of characterizing it as the detectives were twisting her words and passing it back and forth. But we watched the interrogation. I didn't see any of that. She didn't have any objection to what they were saying at the time. She was answering their questions honestly. And there shouldn't be any reason that they shouldn't be able to clarify what she's saying. So, you know, even if one detective is saying, so you're saying you put your hand in the car, and well, yeah, I mean, that's a question that needs to be asked. And they, in my opinion, asked, you know, proper questions. I don't know if they were trying to lead her down a path or what they were doing, or if they had developed a theme or whatever. But I think trying to show that well, again, spoiler alert, I kind of know the ending, but trying to show that the detectives had something to do with how this is painted, I think is a mistake in my opinion. But, you know, obviously I'm biased towards law enforcement, and we saw the interrogation. I didn't see really a whole lot wrong with it. Would you disagree?
Well, the interrogation is designed to frustrate her. When we're
Yes.
talking about the specifics of how a firearm was drawn, how it entered the vehicle, how she entered the vehicle, where the cell phone was, where the victim's hands were, was her finger along the rail, was his hand on the receiver, all these different aspects of it. By simply asking questions and then asking it with a false pretense, by saying, okay, well, what you said was this. Getting her to clarify is how you get to this truth. If she's making this up, she's going to get confused about these details. And I have no doubt that if these are good detectives, they're intentionally asking her questions, which if she's being truthful, she would have to refute the premise of.
Well, not only that, it's memorialized on video. So if there's any question about twisting words or that's not what I said or whatever, well, let's hit rewind. There's nothing to hide. They intentionally recorded the interrogation for this exact reason. So I just think, John, it was kind of a mistake to paint that as like they were being mean to me by twisting my words.
Well, all I could say is if you could see yourself getting flushed down the toilet, maybe you start getting more desperate, and
Yeah.
you need to start doing more because you're losing ground. I mean,
There's that.
you're not necessarily, and it's possible, I this is a deep dive here. I really have no business saying this, but it's possible that, if the attorney wants to tap into some sort of anti-police sentiment or something,
I
that
was just going to say that.
it's possible that this is the route he could take, that, like these are the police, these are
It's funny.
these are the guys that you don't love, and this is how they're screwing over my client. And it could be that they don't actually feel that way. Like you said, it was on tape and we can just review it. But maybe they're tapping into that. But case in point, like we can go back and watch this, and if she's consistent with her story, and no matter how the detectives change what she's saying, if what she says is consistent, that's how you know you're getting the truth. Drew, I'm sure you'll say that interrogators are trying to get them to tell a story, and if they're not telling it the same way every time, we know there's a lie somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And you know what, you've used the term before, locked in to a story. That's the whole goal. Not the whole goal. One of the goals of this interrogation probably would be to lock her into a story. And it's sometimes easier if you don't get the confession, because you can investigate around what is not said, or you know what I mean? If you lock her into a story that says that she pulled the gun out, she never put her finger on the trigger, and blah blah blah, you can investigate around that. You can investigate. You can determine whether you can make attempts to determine whether her fingerprints were on the trigger and the male's fingerprints were on the trigger. You can use eyewitness testimony to show that she never had her finger on the trigger or whatever, and then discredit her that way. So sometimes the confession is not always the end goal. Sometimes just locking them into a proper story that they are putting forward as the truth is just as powerful, because you can debunk a lot of the things that they say. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Of course.
Situation, and here we are in court. Is there anything you learned from this situation or that sticks in your mind from all this 4 years later, 4.5 years later?
That not everybody is going to have a reaction that you think they're going to have. And that clearly trying to do the right thing is not the right answer.
Think you're ever going to help anybody else, try to help anybody?
So
That was-
the road to
was-
hell is paved with good intentions.
That was huge, and she came to the conclusion that I sort of came to, is that you know, you and I were kind of battling about this back and forth the last episode. I even like threw down the gauntlet and said, Drew, am I a bad citizen because I wouldn't do what she's doing? She's finding out, and I think you were right when it has a lot to do with age. But when you're younger and you're more idealistic and you're not sure how the world works, you think that you can go out there and you can be, not to overstate it, but you could be heroic. You can intervene positively in your community. And the reality is that even if you don't get charged, you're still going to get your ass sued. And at the end of the day, what is it worth it to you? And I'm not making a case for cynicism or being jaded or not being a good citizen or whatever, but Hannah Payne just said it herself, like that, you know, doing the right thing is not always the right thing to do.
This is in the water, though, John. This is in the water in America in 2024, and that's why I brought up. I think that's even why we got on the subject of scouting last time, or you know, if you're brought up in a church, or you know, there's the Good Samaritan is a parable, you know, in the Bible that talks about stopping somebody to help them, and you know, have we lost our way? Are we that separated from you know, doing divine, just doing common things? Are we that far away from the golden rule? And you know, to start this whole case, you had somebody that called in as a witness to a traffic crash, and she stuck around. She didn't have to, and it got turned into, well, you had no business inserting yourself into this. You should have minded your own business. You're the reason this guy's dead, and you're going to prison for the rest of your life. And I get the whole gravity of bringing a firearm into this whole thing, and there is a court process for that if it's done fairly. But I think that we have lost our way, and you know, I think I would have a feeling in the pit of my stomach if I didn't stop to help somebody like that. And there were plenty of other witnesses that stopped to help, and. Yeah. You know, it's just that the situation progressed to where it did because of her actions. So what we'll do, John, is we'll, as a teaser, talk for a couple of minutes about the. We'll show a couple of minutes of the cross examination by the state. I almost don't want to say anything. I almost just want to like, here, you guys judge for yourself. So now it's the state's turn to cross examine. Just remember, they represent the people of the state of Georgia. You can draw your own conclusions from that statement.
You just discussed, you remember having an interview on May 7, 2019 with Detective Moore and Detective Hayward.
Correct.
And you recall during that interview when you were discussing the original incident that occurred on Clark Howell, that your vehicle was almost struck by Mr. Herring, correct?
Correct.
It was not struck.
No, it was not.
And that you were able to stop your vehicle before he came through the intersection.
Okay, this is why I wanted you to get the baseline of how she was testifying when her defense attorney was asking her questions, and just compare and contrast with how she's answering these questions, and you tell me if there's a difference.
Correct.
And at that time,
and leave it in the comments below.
you were able to go around and you pulled up on the sidewalk and waited to call the police.
Correct.
And while you were on scene at Clark Howell, you had no issues with Mr. Herring, correct?
No, none.
You never spoke to him directly?
No.
You didn't see any weapons on him?
No.
You never got close to him to smell any odor of alcohol on him?
No, I did not.
And he didn't threaten you in any way.
No, I did not.
And you never told the detectives or the police that Terry Robinson told you he was drunk.
I did, yes.
You told the police?
I told 911 dispatch.
Boom. This is what I'm saying. This is why everything is so semantical and on point. They're making a case that she never told the police X, Y, and Z. She's saying, yeah, I had the phone in my hand. I had called 911. They told me they were 911, and I was telling them everything. Therefore, in Hannah Payne's mind, she was telling the police. I completely get that. I completely understand her frame of mind. They're trying to paint a picture that you didn't tell the two detectives, AKA the police. She's saying, yeah, I told the police. I told the police when I was on the phone. You can hear it on the recording. And that's true. You have anything, John?
Well, if there's any disparity between her reporting that the person is an intoxicated driver and the police knowing or not knowing that in terms of their response, which, you know, you have to wonder if the police did know that, if that accounts for their 20-minute response time to the scene. And I don't know, I'm just speculating.
Yeah.
But if the police don't know that this person's an intoxicated driver leaving the scene, it would be on the dispatchers that didn't inform the police, not Hannah Payne.
I don't think that, and again, this is why I want to make the reference of the 911 calls. I don't think that they knew that until Terry Robinson called the second time. And he literally said, look, we've been here 20 minutes. And the reason I'm saying this is this guy's not acting right. I think he's impaired.
All right, let's talk about 911 dispatch. Now, you also stated that when Mr. Herring took off from the incident location, you were already at your vehicle.
Correct.
And you had gotten into your vehicle, correct?
I was sitting in my vehicle on the phone. Correct.
And Terry Robinson and Mr. Kimball were still in the street.
Correct.
And you stated that he waved you over.
Yes.
And the only thing you heard Terry Robinson say was, go, go, go.
Correct.
That's your testimony today.
Correct.
So he never told you to take a picture of the tag?
Not that I remember, no.
And you also testified today that you never heard the 911 dispatch give you a warning not to chase?
No, I never said that. I said that she told me that she wanted me to be safe. And I said that from what I took it as was that she didn't want me to chase. And when I explained to her I wasn't chasing, I was just simply staying with him until a police officer could get to us.
And the 911 dispatch indicated to you approximately 4 times to either not chase Mr. Herring and go back to the scene, correct?
Incorrect. I only heard it one time, and she told me not to chase, to be safe. She never told me to go back to the scene until after I had told her that I was behind him and that she wanted me to be safe. And in doing so, she said that she wanted both of us to go back.
I'm handing you what has been previously marked.
Just another tip, as we talked about in the last episode, watch the other female prosecutor. Just watch her eyes shift. She's watching the jury during all these things to kind of get their reaction to some of the stuff.
This dates Exhibit 40, which is a copy of the 911 transcript. If you can review that. Female caller. Dispatcher tells you, okay, can you get his tag number? Your response, hold on, he's driving away. It's a red Dodge Dakota. Give me 1 second, hold on. Okay, so he is going west down Clark Howell. No, I'm sorry, down Forest Parkway. Dispatcher, okay, so you couldn't get a tag number? Your response, no, but I'm catching up to him right now. And the dispatcher tells you, okay, ma'am, we actually do not want you to chase him. We just want you to be safe. It's the first time they tell you not to chase him, correct?
She didn't tell me not to. She just said that they didn't want me to because of my safety. At least is the way that I interpreted it.
Okay, I'll give you that. So they told you that they do not want you to chase him, correct?
Correct.
And what did you say next? You can read it.
I understand.
Okay. And the dispatcher tells you after that, it's not safe to chase him second time, correct?
That's what the transcripts guy said. When we're listening to it, I don't remember hearing that, but
And can you read what your response was?
I understand 100%. I'm just going to get the tag number, if nothing else. But I am going west down Forest Parkway, and I'm almost up to him.
So you told the dispatcher that you understood 100%, correct?
That I needed to be safe, correct.
And the dispatcher states after that, okay, after you provide the tag number, which you provide the tag number before you make contact with Mr. Herring, correct?
Correct.
And once she gets the tag number from you, she tells you, okay, so if you could go back to that location where the incident happened because someone is actually on the way to you guys now. Is that correct?
Correct.
So there should be no confusion that she told both of you to go back to that location.
Well, if you keep, it's not confusion, it's just more to the conversation.
But you said your interpretation was that you thought that she was advising you and Mr. Herring to return to the incident location, correct?
Because that's what she says in the next line.
Okay, I'll let you read it. Read the entire response from dispatch.
From what the transcript reads is,
From the beginning, okay.
female caller or dispatcher?
Dispatcher.
Okay, so if you could go back to that location where the incident happened because someone is actually on the way to you guys now.
And Terry Robinson and Mr. Kimball were still at that location, correct?
That was 2 out of the 4 people.
Terry
that were
Robinson
involved.
and Mr. Kimball were still at
Correct.
that location, correct? And that's the third time she's telling you to not continue to follow Mr. Herring and go back to the location.
No,
correct?
that's when she told me to go back to the location the first time. She didn't say anything about not following.
All right. And so what is your response to the dispatch at that time? You can read the next paragraph.
That there's a police officer. Okay, well, there is a police officer there, but he is drunk. I'm sorry, but I'm here to tell you I'm not going to follow him because he's going to cause another accident. So I will stay behind him until an officer can get to us. But until then, I'm not moving.
Right. So you were aware that dispatcher did not want you to continue to follow Mr. Herring, correct?
Sure.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
All right. And the dispatcher tells you after that, that's what I want. I want you guys to go back to the location where it happened and an officer will be out there momentarily. So that's a 4th time she's telling you again, don't follow and head back to the incident location, correct?
Incorrect.
Okay. So what am I missing?
She said, which in the transcript, it reads differently than what you can hear on the call.
I'm talking about the transcript that's before you, Ms. Payne.
I'm just speaking from facts of what I've known.
I'm asking you to
She didn't talk on the phone to 911 on a piece of paper. She's making a great point. She's saying that there is a disparity between what the actual transcript is and what the phone call is. And Drew, case in point, you and I having a conversation, there's always overspeak. There's things that are missed. There's things that are interpreted in according to context. Prosecutors hammering her on the literal translation, the transcript of it. I get that. But yeah, when you're having a conversation, it's slightly different. And when Hannah's saying, well, there's a difference between what was happening live in this conversation and what's happening on the transcript, she wasn't communicating by letter to dispatch. So I think she's making a valid point there.
She's not only making a valid point, I think it's a very intentional thing that the state is doing by not playing the 911 call and saying, did you say this? Or matching it to the transcript. There could be inconsistencies between the transcript and the 911 call because it's a human being typing that out.
Sure.
So what she's saying is the transcript says, and she's like, I'm asking you, she's saying, well, you just made this point. The transcript is different from what the 911 call says. She's also emphasizing, she's got the emphasis on the wrong syllable. Right? She's got the emphasis on the wrong syllable. She's saying, the state is saying, so I need you to stop following, but I need you guys to go back to the scene. And Hannah's saying, no. She said, I need you to stop following, but I need you guys to go back to the scene, which is an interpretation of when you get up with this guy, you tell him, both of you need to go back. And I don't see the problem with that. I don't see the problem with her interpretation. She is not a, they're going to make this point that she's not a post-certified law enforcement officer. She's not a cop. She's not this. She's not that. But they hold her to the standard of understanding exactly what this 911 operator is saying without clarification, and that it's an accepted practice amongst cops and prosecutors that's what they meant. And I don't find it fair, to be honest. Like I'm telling you, I'm pro cop, I'm pro community, I'm pro prosecution, I'm pro, but in this case, I don't see that this is fair at all, where she's having to read off of this transcript, and this representative of the state, the people of the state of Georgia, she's rude, and
Yes.
and she's not, I get courtroom theatrics and all of that, but there's a certain standard or decorum that we're all supposed to have, I thought. And if the defense attorney was rude to the state's witness, don't you think the judge would say something about it? I mean, things get contentious. There's no question about it. And I understand all that. Is this a time to be contentious, though, when you're talking about facts and you're sitting on the stand in your own defense for your life? Like for life in prison? You've been charged 3 counts of murder for murdering one person, 3 counts of possession of a firearm for the 3 counts of murder for murdering one person. I really think that we're down to semantics, and we're down to what she interpreted when, and I don't think that this is a fair characterization that the state's making. I don't think that these are fair assertions.
It's grandstanding, and this is the part. This is, sounds like me in like part 2 or part 3 or whatever, where she's trying to say that, Hannah Payne had no business being involved, which is what you were talking about earlier in part 6. But again, I just bring it down to this, that whatever you want to make out of whether or not she should have been following, when she approached the victim's vehicle, when he reached out, said, "I've got something for you, bitch." It's a whole other ball game. And
It is.
they know that that there's enough doubt with that, was that finger in the trigger guard or not. They know that there's enough doubt that they have to get Hannah Payne on the first part. They have to convince that jury that she's this avenging traffic person. She's going out and getting revenge for this person who's leaving the scene. They have to paint her or characterize her that way so that the incident of her reaching into the vehicle or being pulled into the vehicle can all be seen within that context. So they have to get her now in terms of following this vehicle, because later there's too much doubt.
After being told not to, and by the way, she's conflating, she keeps saying they told you 4 times. She's conflating the words, we don't want you to follow, we want you to be safe, we want you to go back to the scene, we want you to go back to the scene. She's saying that 4 times they told you that it was unsafe to follow. No. They made 4 different statements. Well, they actually made 3 different statements. One of the statements duplicates, and they're not the same thing. And when she's saying, and even Hannah's trying to read it, she's like, no, she didn't tell me not to follow. She told me that we don't want you to follow, and we want you to remain safe. And I told her I 100% agree to the fact that I totally understand that you want me to remain safe. That's reasonable.
What it comes down to is that, you mentioned this like in part 4 or part 5 or 3, but in her mind, she's not chasing, she's not doing anything dangerous. She's not a passive observer at this point. She's actively involved, but she's not trying to aggravate the situation. She's not trying to cause anything. She's trying to get that tag number, trying to get his direction of travel and his location to help the police. She doesn't have any intention of adding to the danger of this. She's just trying to help a criminal situation in which no police have shown up.
Right. And they're blaming, like, I get it. They are blaming her for inflaming this whole thing, but the whole thing could have avoided had the police shown up. And it's not necessarily the police's fault. There could have been 10 accidents up and down 85, right where that took place. I mean, who knows? Who knows what they were?
But who's really inflaming it, though? Let's talk about, we do this a lot when we break down police videos, right? Something drops, something happens, an officer involved shooting. First thing, guys like you and I do, Drew, and other people in this arena, what did the police do, right or wrong? We never, ever, we skip past the discussion of what did this criminal asshole do? Why do we never talk about, like, well, why did this guy wake up and decide that he was going to go down there and pass a bad check at this liquor store? Why do we ever not talk about how they decided that they were going to get drunk and drive behind the wheel, or how when confronted they decided that they were going to assault somebody? Somehow we skip all over it and we go straight to the response of how did the people who responded handle this. We don't ever get to have a fair discussion of, like, well, the person who put himself in the situation where he would wind up dead, he assumed certain risks every time that happened, whether it's passing a bad check and being in a situation where the police are going to be called on you, or drinking and driving, or whatever. There's assumption of risk. And I know it doesn't play out that way in a criminal court, but you and I should at least talk about that we should talk about that this guy Kenneth Herring, who decided one day he was going to wake up and make some stupid decisions and behave like an animal. If you are grabbing a woman and say, I got something for you, bitch, I don't have respect for you, because I would never behave that way. I think that plays a part in it. And unfortunately, we don't get to cross-examine Mr. Kenneth Herring because he's dead. But I would like to have in this court, Drew, at least some discussion about how he contributed to his own demise.
Yeah. I mean, look, you're 100% right, John. We in America tend to fast forward through a lot of the details. And when we get to it next week, when we talk about the rest of this closing argument of this, I'm sorry, not the closing argument, but the testimony of the state, the cross-examination of the state, then their closing argument, you're going to see a whole lot of that. It's something that I talked about in one of the earlier episodes, where we've got 6 paragraphs of detail here, then the main event happens and we got maybe 1 sentence, then we got 20 paragraphs of detail here for the closing. What happened here? Let's talk about what happened here, because for some reason we want to avoid this. And that's what a good interviewer will do. A good interviewer will get into the weeds of this part, because that's the hardest part to talk about, but that's where the truth lies. And that's what we should be doing here in the courtroom, in the interrogation room, and on the streets, John.
So next week, Hannah Payne, part 7. So folks, just a reminder, we love voicemails. Do leave us a voicemail, 848-COMM-911. That's 848-266-6911 on YouTube. Make sure you're hitting like and hitting a subscribe. Turn on your little notification bell or whatever. Make sure you're keeping up with the Comm Center. We're dropping content all the time. You can catch up with Apple Podcasts. Again, please leave us a 5-star rating and review. That stuff helps us out so much. Same thing on Spotify. Leave a 5-star rating. Let people know that you love the show. Reach out to us at the Comm Center. Tell us what's going on. We appreciate that. Again, on X, we're there. We exist there. And you can catch us on that platform. Facebook, of course, if you want to catch up with us, you can do that.